Welcome to Land Language, the podcast transforming landscapes from toxic to regenerative. We're your host, Brit from Blueprint Earth,
and co-host Bethany from Bethany Rydmark Landscapes.
We explore beautiful, functional design through conversations with scientists, vendors, contractors, and designers who are changing the industry.
Whether you're in the field or at the drafting table, join us as we explore regenerative practices that care for people, place, and planet.
Let's dig in. Today we have the honor of hosting Andrea Palacio. She is the owner over at Crewless. She is a founder who has implemented AI in her own business to optimize her lawn care business, and has also gone off to be able to help other businesses solve their problems with AI. Now, the biggest question a lot of people have, Andrea, is what does that actually mean? We're all hearing about AI. We're all hearing about we should be using it in our business. But when somebody works with somebody like you, what are you doing to help them actually implement AI within their business to solve their own problems?
That's a great question, Britt. So what we do is we look at the business and analyze all your processes, all your systems, analyze exactly what's keeping you from scaling, right? Maybe your business has a problem with leads, right? Because right now the reason why you're not making 3 times more revenue than you're currently making is because you don't have enough people knowing about your service or your product, right? Whereas maybe another business, they already have the leads coming in, but the problem is that they don't have the right systems, and so they're limited by their capacity. So what we do is, depending on the exact problem or that constraint that you have in your business right now, we look at the potential solutions on how AI, let's say, could automate your onboarding process or the delivery process. And so that is going to free up your team by automating those tasks that they're currently doing manually or that are repetitive. And when you free up their time, they're now able to take on more work and do more things, right? Or if your problem is and the constraint is actually leads, well, how do we use AI to help you generate more leads for your business at a lower cost? And so AI helps you do a couple different things, right? It's reducing your cost, it helps you increase your capacity, and it helps you just step back from the business, because a lot of business owners are working over 60 80-hour weeks because we're wearing 10 different hats, right? We're the marketing person, we're the admin, we're the customer service, and we're doing it all. And so how are we able to run a business where we are not doing all of it and where our business is 100% dependent on us, but we actually have a business that has the right systems and the right processes, so that each person is now able to ask AI exactly, okay, what is the question that I need answered? And AI is able to help them before they actually reach out to you as the owner. The same goes for your customers, your employees, even your AI agents, right? Just having it all in one seamless and just like a streamlined process, if that makes sense.
When we met a handful of months ago, you had just created Crewless for your own lawn care business, and you were using Claude Code. And at that point, it was a couple other chat was still hot on the on the surface, and OpenClaw was kind of the main pull at that point. And so much has shifted because AI is moving so fast. But I looked at what you had built, and it was KPIs. It was literally like monitoring your team and watching how they would move through the city, and it would help you optimize their flows in terms of what houses they needed to go to and what sequence, and then tell you a bit about how to measure if the guys were profitable or not. So you were measuring each crew in terms of profitability, and you were able to send your invoices from the system, and you were able to have this whole company scorecard as well as the company operating system. And so now, you're layering that onto marketing, and you're layering that onto sales, and you've really kind of expanded just what you created, a handful of months ago. And as somebody who runs a service industry business and design and construction, I can see the value in just getting support from a system in that way. Because you're right, when we are an owner wearing every single hat, and we are starting to really start to pull ourselves out of working in the business and on the business, to me, this has been a super tool. And what I mean by that is I can't be the one who really goes and checks out my SEO and make sure that I'm following every news story to make sure that every Instagram post we're putting is on beat with what's happening in climate news right now. And so, using Claude and has been our system that we use, and using Manus to build our own OS has been inspired a lot by what you already did with Crewless. And, you and I got to meet through Dan Martell's coaching program, which is kind of this really great space where a lot of people start to think about this sorts of things, but a lot of people don't actually do what you're doing. You can be taught about like you need to use AI and here's some things you could do, but it's like drinking water from a fire hose with just trying to figure out how to ground it and actually implement it within your own business. And so if I was a business owner coming to you and I was like, I know I should be doing this stuff, what are some of the first things that you feel like are like easy things? Like, let's just start with these, first little implementations in AI so we can help you start to move the needle to free up your time.
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me just go back a little bit in time. So I didn't build the automations or the systems for Angler for our landscaping company a few months ago. We acquired the company 3 years ago, and when we acquired the company, everything started going downhill. Like we literally started losing all of our clients, losing all of our employees, losing all of our revenue. So things just started crashing significantly when we acquired the company. Just within a month, 2 months, it wasn't even too long, right? At the same time, I was pregnant with my second son, and my first son was only 6 months old. So you can imagine the type of pressure that we were in. And when we acquired the company, we used an SBA loan, which meant that all of our personal assets were the collateral of that business transaction. So the reason why I'm mentioning that is because the level of pressure and the level of commitment that we had to make sure that it worked, it was pretty massive, right? Um, and so as we started rebuilding the business back up, we started finding ourselves working over 80-hour weeks, and just we always we planned having our kids, but we didn't plan of giving them just what was left of us. We planned on being excellent parents. And when that didn't go as we planned, I was like, oh, I don't really want to do this, because I'm not going to remember how much I work, but I am going to remember how much of an awful mom I'm being right now. And the reason why I was being an awful mom is not because I didn't want to be the best mom for them. It's just because I couldn't give anything else. I didn't have anything left to give, because I was giving all of it to the business that we had just thought of making this great decision of acquiring, right? And so that's when AI came into my life. I started looking into AI as a solution to solve my own business problems. What were those problems? The problems that we were having were I was answering like over 50 calls. We had over 200 or 300 customers that were calling us about, why didn't you guys show up to service my property? Why didn't you guys do this? Why did the crew do that? Right? So a bunch of complaints. We were trying to put marketing out there so we would make up for all the clients that we were losing. And as we tried to put marketing, it was just really expensive. We were losing a lot of money. And most importantly, we were missing a lot of those calls from people that were calling us to book a request or an appointment to give them an estimate, right? So I started finding that the first and most important, like we all have a service-based businesses, the same common things that need to be resolved, right? The first one is you're dealing with, again, customer service. How do you get your leads? Following up on those leads and booking those appointments, right? And so the first few things that I would say you need to do as a service-based business, which is what I did, 2 years ago when I started implementing all this in my business 3 years ago, it was okay. The first thing is we have our clients dropping like flies. We need to stop that right now. And so the first thing that we did is like, okay, let's automate a process where our clients can give feedback on the service. And so we automated just having them receive pictures after every single service, the notes from the crews on how they could actually improve their property. And that was the first thing we did. And that resulted in us having we also added that they would receive a text message after every service where they could rank it on whether the service was good or whether the service was not good. If it was good, it would take them to a Google review. If it wasn't good, then it would take them to a form where they will fill a complaint form that we would receive, and we can now direct to our crew on whatever it is that they did bad, and start training our crew accordingly based on the actual situation that had happened at a specific property. The second thing that I did, it was just overwhelming. And again, this doesn't happen for it happens mostly for people that are doing B2C. If you're doing B2B, maybe you don't have that many customers calling you or coming in. But for us, having an AI receptionist that handled every single call, it was a major change, just because so many calls were going to miss calls. As much as we tried to answer every single call, I could only do so much with two kids, right? Holding a newborn and a toddler. And my husband just trying to, because at the point it got so bad, we went from 12 employees down to 2 employees. My husband was out there doing the labor so that we wouldn't lose more customers. It was really bad because we bought that company thinking that we were going to be investors and we were going to grow and acquire more and eventually just exit, right? And it turned out he ended up doing labor out there in Florida heat, which was, it was rough. Like when I tell you it was rough, like we were working, 6 a.m., 7, 8, 9, just finished sending quotes and stuff like that. And so when we put that AI receptionist, it really helped us because now the calls, as soon as they came in, whether it was a customer that had a complaint, it would automatically just create that complaint form and we would handle it, right? If it was a lead, it would that request would be input automatically in our CRM and our calendar so that we would know, okay, this person already has their problem solved. They feel like, see, when a lead reaches out to your company, they have a problem that they need to be solved immediately, right? If we wait for them, if they get a voicemail, they feel like their issue has not been addressed, and so they're going to call their competitor. The second that you tell them, okay, perfect, your appointment has already been booked for tomorrow, they already know that somebody's coming tomorrow to help them out, right? And so the second we changed that, it was like, okay, revenue started going up and we were not missing the calls anymore. And I wasn't having to just juggle a million things at the same time to answer those phone calls. So I would say that would be the place where we started that made the biggest difference.
I can so relate to that. I think Bethany can too, with just being moms who run businesses, little ones. And, whether you're a mom running a business or you're a family, or you're leading a pack of dogs, and nobody has enough time to like solve all of the challenges that small business and growing businesses have. And so
Yep.
I can like really harmonize with what you're saying because there is only so many hours in the day, and the truth is your kids don't get what's left over. They really need you, and it's so important that that is the priority, and honestly, when you are a business, especially when you're growing a personal brand and you're growing the business brand, when you put your kids, forward and you put your self-care forward, it's how it helps you show up in your business in this beautiful way where people feel a wholeness and a sense of them being cared for because they're saying that you hold a standard of how you care for yourself. And that's important. So, as we adopt AI into our businesses, I think it's really this invitation of how we bring even deeper human connection to each other. And so when we think about like how we use AI in our business, I really think about how do I take skills that are repetitive or things that take 2 to 3 hours and swap out that computer time with the ability to have a human connection? So, like, I'll give you an example. So, we've been building a skill with Claude, and it's not perfect yet because these things do take some time to build, right? The first time you build it, you just need a little time to tweak it and you need to be patient with it. It's like kind of training a new employee, but it is faster. It doesn't take 6 months to 18 months, right? It takes like a few weeks, which is amazing. And so when we make plant boards in our design process, it usually takes a designer about 3 hours because they have to go and grab every file of every picture of every plant, go and make sure the description is correct. If it's a new plant, they have to make a new plant, and it's just this huge process on InDesign to build out these boards. And I'm like, "This is silly. Claude can do this for us. It can go and grab the pictures from our folders. It can go and grab the information that it needs from the ecoregion. So it'll be even more specific because we don't just design in the Willamette Valley. We design from Washington through Oregon, Bend to coast. And there's so many different ecoregions and plants behave differently in different ecoregions. And so having our designers go and check that on the web every single time we build a new plant board is like insanity. And so that we would have to charge to a customer, and now we can choose a different experience. Now with that 2 to 3 hours, we can go and do a nursery visit with them where they really get to engage with, like, what are the plants? They get to connect and have that ownership of, here is how I want to feel in my garden. I want to see these textures and these colors and these smells, and I get to actually see them, not just look at them on a screen of just pictures. And so, when I think about that, I think about how it's actually improved the human to human connection, right? And you're saying, like, when you're talking about calls being picked up, also, you are also helping the human to human connection because you're saying, I care about you enough to make sure that you are taken care of, right? Not when I can get to you when I am like at hour 12 in the day with a screaming baby in my arm and I'm just going, "Sorry, I'm a mom, but I wanna help you," right? But you're saying, like, "I wanna respect your time and give you what you need in order for you to know that we wanna take really good care of you," which is a raving fan experience.
Yeah.
And so when I think about, like, just how to frame the mindset around where to use AI in the business, if we're just starting to talk about, like, responsibility of using I would really start to look at the system of your business, and you are so good at this, Andrea, and I see this every time that you talk, of helping people be able to thread what, like, a customer experience is, and be able to see the points where you get to take an opportunity to implement AI to then create the best customer experience so that they have a raving fan experience, your business grows, and they tell all their friends, and, you know, it's unicorns and rainbows from there. And so, when I think of, like, the first step you take to go into somebody's business, I'm imagining you're kinda dissecting, like, their ideal client profiles flow through their actual life cycle within the business and how to kinda keep them there and keep the clients evergreen.
Yeah. Yeah. What you mentioned is really, really good because it's so important. I mean, I have a lot of customers sometimes that are like, well, I don't really know that we should, reach out to have AI reach out to our clients. I'm like, we don't want to have AI reach out to your clients. Like, we're just freeing you up on the things because let me finish that thought. Like we're just freeing you up so that you can really open up your time and now you can have better and more like higher quality conversations with your clients. Like if you're filled with a bunch of to-dos and then when you're speaking to a client, you're already thinking about the things that you should be doing instead of being fully present in that conversation, right? And so that's kind of like one of the things that I really stands out in is okay, let's just open up your time and you can still be in the strategy, the vision. In fact, we want you to be there. Like you cannot be replaced when it comes to vision and strategy. In fact, I was just recording a video today for social media where I was just like, I didn't realize it until I was creating the video, and it was all about how, we had automated the entire business. From last year, back in 2024, the business had already been automated to the point where I was able to step away. My husband was now really working part time. And so we ended up putting a manager in place to handle the entire business. And for the full year of 2025, we had this manager in place, just running the things that were like, okay, that we just didn't need to do anymore, right? So basically, the business was now running on its own with a manager. And we find in December 30th, we find that the business had collapsed. Okay, so it again, everything we had worked for, the manager had just collapsed it and crashed it. And in January 2nd, we fly because when we move out of the country then just fly back and forth, and we find that in January 2nd he had been stealing from the company, and just 1 week later we get over $10,000 $15,000 worth of equipment stolen from our yard. And that was the biggest wake up call. And it took me a long time. And one of the things that I remember Dan asking me was like, okay, how did you contribute to this? Because at first I was very upset and very frustrated. And as I look back, having last month, just having the biggest month that we've ever had in business and financially, I just looked at my husband and I said, this happened because we were the worst leaders, because we just stepped away and completely said, okay, the manager will handle the thinking, the leadership, the vision, the strategy, and AI will handle the rest, and pretty much we're completely hands off. That's not how business works. That's not how business operates. So that was a lesson. And the reason why I'm mentioning that is because, again, there's certain things that you do not want to delegate to AI. And one of those things is leadership. Just because you can't automate or delegate certain things to AI doesn't mean you should, right? And leadership is definitely one of those things that you would never just hand it to the wrong person or to AI, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And so that's such a huge lesson, and it's great to see you smiling because that's tough to swallow for sure. What is
Mhm.
it that you learned in that moment? Like, what does leadership look like for you now?
That's a great question. So the reason why when we met just a couple of months ago, I was like, yeah, now I have this operating system where I actually measure my employees' performance. I know exactly what's going on in the business. That's what leadership looks to me now, right? Like now I'm able to just see a dashboard and see exactly what's going on with the business. Now I'm fully present. Like I'm not present in the landscaping company because I just stepped away completely because I'm now doing the my AI business, and that's my whole, like, 100% of my time goes towards that. But my husband has now, even though he just goes to the office just once a week, one day of the week, he is now a leader in terms of, okay, he's now communicating with the manager in his team. He's now having that daily communication. He now has the exact metrics of how's the marketing doing, who are the clients that have canceled. He's now fully aware of what exactly are the key numbers, the key metrics that he needs to keep track of in order for us to know whether things are going well or not well. And so now, we don't just hand things over to somebody without having proof that things are actually going as they should be, right? We
Yeah.
kind of like took this role back in 2025, and the reason why that happened is because we're just like, okay, we could just focus on our personal lives now, and things are going well. And just like with that, just trusting our gut, trusting our feeling. No, like you don't trust anything. You need to see the data, you need to see the metrics, you need to know what that looks like.
Yep.
So that changed significantly.
So I'm in a coaching program with Ted Miller. He's local to Portland, Oregon, and he's fantastic. He's actually helped been a client of Tony Robbins for decades. And so you get a lot of that same sort of information in terms of like the Tony methods, but it's like the guy who helped build the models. So one of the things that I really love, and he was partners with Chet Holmes for decades too, before Chet died, who wrote The Ultimate Sales Machine, which is one of the best books I've ever read in my life, is that your team will not respect what is not inspected. And we I'm working with his wife as our personal coach, Stephanie Vaughn, and we are really diving into scorecards, and we've had them for design team, we've had them for me, but I think that what I didn't realize is how much I wasn't really measuring myself. I was always looking to measure my team, but I wasn't really looking at like my input. And so my scorecard does look like revenue. It's making sure that revenue is moving every week, every month in the right direction. And it's helping people create a work back from what we need to do. And then making sure that that revenue goal is being hit by the plan and that we're sticking to plan. And then it's also making sure that our sales processes and our sales team are also being in flow and we're hot seating each other. And so, there's so much that goes into leading a team that is just relentless training. And when you say to somebody, I didn't know this, okay, people will, on average, will pick up 7% of what you tell them. So when you look at your training cycle and you look at like we you look at how, you're like, "We said that like 3 months ago. People remember that." Like, no, they don't. You have to keep circling, right? And in this leadership cycle, like that also is so important if you wanna scale your business is to relentlessly train, relentlessly measure, and keep your eyes on the dashboard because if you don't, you're just like the Energizer bunny, just like smacking the drum, hoping that your batteries run out because that would be the best case scenario for overworking yourself. And, it makes me really just grateful for how bringing in these implementation moments through AI, uh, it just makes me grateful for doing that and for really being mindful of what you're talking about. And the truth is that like we don't need to use spreadsheets anymore. Spreadsheets are a great place for people to like input data who really just if you don't have your own operating system and then kind of taking those spreadsheets and dropping them in to Claude or whatever LLM you're using, to then measure. But the truth is that like people also really need their hands held. And one of the things that I really love about, how I know you think and how I know like you have been trained, right, through Dan Martell and other coaching programs is like being trained on how to measure scorecards and how to lead a team is really a skill. And it also is a big stretch when you're going from like a solopreneur to a small team to a big team to then know like what needs to be measured because you also don't need to measure absolutely everything. You need to measure like very specific things. And so, I think about like Matt Burlack too, who's part of this whole world who from Precision. And like that kind of training from those kinds of top, I will call them like the gurus in the AI and optimization industry is so valuable. So when somebody gets to work with you, like person to person, business to business, it really is such a treat to have somebody who's been trained in that mindset. Because the truth is that they've been doing it so much better and in such a large way where they're building, they're both building like $1 billion series of companies. And so it's nice to know that like when I talk to you, I'm like, okay, you come from that same mindset of how to actually measure people in a way that's successful and meaningful. And, I really want to make sure that, listeners know like what's appropriate with AI too. And so many of us are just starting to jump into using it and we're kind of thinking like, oh, it can help me learn my like listen to my horoscope and like we're using it as our just like answer my question or my personal therapy or like whatever it may be, which is like more of a human to human. Some things you should just pick up a book for, right? Or do a Google. But when it comes to being responsible with your use of it, I think you're starting to see just how much you can optimize your business with it and how when we're using it, because of the resource implications of AI, which are just flat out real at this point in time, we really want to make sure that we are optimizing our relationship with it. So we're not just, dumping glasses of water everywhere that then turn into toxic water. And we're not just, blowing up plumes of smoke of coal to produce the energy. And so, I know this is like a real part of your heart, Bethany, and why you're like Bethany was a little apprehensive to have a conversation around AI in our podcast just because of like being regenerative, being ecologically minded. It's, it
Sure.
doesn't like it's questioning. And it's that is 100% true. And like I'm curious to hear like your take on, how you really feel about
Yeah.
this.
No, I think a couple of comments you made kind of landed with me when you were describing the desire to be a present mom. Like you're building a business and you want to be with your kids, and there's this balance and what really matters ultimately to do the duties of work and family and caretaking. And I'm thinking a little bit in the reverse of like Mother Earth, hey, like we want to be a part of the family of life here in a way that is ultimately sustainable and nourishing. And in the same way, you want to honor your kids with your attention. And likewise, each of us, in our families, we want to honor our kids, honor our partners and our communities with the best of who we are and with our thoughtfulness of choices. Same thing, I think my motivation in all sorts of these learning opportunities and decisions about how to continue to grow as a species with our resources and all of these amazing innovations. What does it mean to ultimately still stay tethered to that relationship with our natural systems and with the amazing planet we've been given? Um, and it's not lost to me. I was telling Brit before we started recording just this morning, I saw that the state of Oregon is number 3 in the country for number of data centers, and it's just continuing to build and grow. I say continue. There's also a lot of pushback. Fellow, people in Hillsborough and Lapine and other places really uh, stood against the kind of unmitigated development that's happening. And I think
Right.
that's a piece that I'm considering also when you described the second story that really stuck out. You described this ultimate kind of misstep and failure of handing over the reins, stepping back and imagining like, oh, it's all going to take care of itself. It's built and it's great. And I think that's the same situation I'm facing right now as I look at innovation, where the story we're being told is that AI is here to help. Lean as hard as you can on all of it, hook, line, and sinker, go, don't stop. It's going to benefit everybody. Don't look back. And I think ultimately, for progress to be made in most any category of life, right, there has to be a tension between the desire you're going after, the innovation that you're going to implement, what the outcome will be, and also the resources it takes to do that. Because again, your resources of 80 hours of your time to go into building a company week by week and having your kids suffer and have these things that ultimately matter the most to you end up being depleted just to make it work. That's not sustainable. And likewise, if we tell ourselves that innovation in this technology will solve all of our problems, but then in pushing on that, and the equivalent 80 hours of pushing on AI, and we untethered ourselves from relationships to our water, to our land, to our resources, et cetera, then we've really ended up in another misstep. And so that's probably in the current living out of things right now. I mean, candidly, I'm a business owner. I have all of these same sorts of constraints and conundrums, and I'm I'm probably much more timid than Brit is in terms of experimentation, but I'm not totally ignorant of it. I've used various things to dabble and to experience how quick and time saving so many little pieces can be. It's quite amazing. And I'm imagining, 100 years ago, some of these innovations that came along and people were just like whiplash, like, oh my God, wow, this is a night and day different technology. And what does that mean? So in current practice, I'm really just thinking about how to be the most intentional in the uses that we make. And that's probably the same across all things, whether we're using resources to build a landscape or to work with something that's living, whether we're, buying groceries. I was mentioning to Britt, like to go to the store and just recklessly buy food and waste it and build a little bit of a menu out of it and then put the rest in the compost or the trash heap because you didn't get around to. I mean, that's so wasteful in terms of the resource to provide. On the flip side, when you're thoughtful and you're buying from a great grower and you're going to your farmer's market or intentionally choosing brands and things that are nourishing and well produced all the way back, great. Then we're nourishing each other and holding up a network of life. And so I think in that same way, I can see it's bothersome to me as a farmer's daughter when I see data centers like gobbling up farmland, and then I hear about people just jumping into their chat, this, that, and the other random blah blah blah, whatever. It just feels like, oh wow, we're not being conscientious at all in that example. Versus what does it take to come and continue to learn how to use the tools for their highest and best use in the most respectful way possible. Another tangential conversation is the design of these data centers and what's going on. Again, like I don't imagine that we're going to be holding back the reins and stopping this charging horse from continuing galloping. It's going. Humans are making this thing. It's happening, but it doesn't have to be an inevitable direction that it goes in. It can be guided thoughtfully. I still don't know exactly how. That's my cynical mentality because I watch a lot of the telltale signs of dis-ease in the world, but that shouldn't stop us from trying to examine our choices and figure out where to be the most precise and useful. That's my like stewing on it when I really consider where we are in this day and
Yeah.
age.
Yeah. Yeah, I love what you just said, Beth, because for me, the reason why it was so hard for me when we bought the company is because prior to that, prior to being pregnant with my first son, I actually lived on a sailboat for 4 years, and I sailed across the Caribbean for 4 of those years, which meant that I was very connected with nature, and I saw a lot I was very conscious of that, and how much plastic there was around the entire ocean. Just when I would go scuba diving, like how many times, I was at random islands in the mirror in like the Bahamas or like the middle of the Caribbean, and it was just an island covered in plastic, right? Like literally these are real things that I was experiencing. And so for me it's just what he mentioned is seeing a balance, right? Because at the end of the day, we are all here because we want to leave the world in a better place than what we found it, right? And that also means we have to be the best version of ourselves and be the most present humans that we can possibly be in, and that requires a lot of different things, right? It's like how do you heal yourself from different pains that you have gone through as you're through your life? How do you also have a balance between everything, the material things that we want to accomplish, right? Like whether that's business, financial, all that good stuff, and how do we use the right number of resources that we need but still kind of like give back so that we can make the most out of our entire experience here. I don't know if I don't know. I don't know if what I'm saying even makes sense, but to me in my head it's making sense of just
It
like
does.
how we have just so many different parts, right? And we just have to balance all those different parts that we come across. It's like, well, now we have, back in the 2000s, or whenever the internet started, 19 something, right? It was like, well, how do we use this to make our life better, to make our life to be able to do more with what we have? Now we have AI. Is like, how can we do more without affecting as much as we could be affecting, right? And still manage to have that balance between, again, being present in our lives, having that human connection, because at the end of the day, it all comes back to not to that presence and that being, but that requires us, like I said, to heal those pains and be able to share that human connection with other people in a way where we're going to encourage them to to just live better in a more conscious way. um I don't know, just my thoughts.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is really in line with responsibility.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I resonate with your story from, being overseas and seeing the resource use and seeing the implication of plastic washed up on shore. I had, similarly, I spent a year backpacking around the world in 2012, and it was so enlightening to be in completely different cultures, different countries, seeing completely different ways of living, and then also seeing the implications of US based uh, market demands on other places. For example, my mind goes to like Cambodia, and going to see these places where folks making fast fashion were really, in really awful circumstances, and seeing the piles and piles and piles of wasted fabrics and materials and garments being sold on the black market because it's leftover that someone brought from a factory, and, seeing the underbelly of that, and then coming back ultimately and paying even more attention to the thoughtfulness of practice of folks that, design and create. I'm speaking to the fashion world as an example, right? But like to design and create clothing that we all need and want and desire. We want to be sheltered and given, warmth and protection, or we want to have something that expresses our personality and is creative. And there's something so beautiful about all of that creation. And it really is functionally, it might be the same thing to have a shirt here and a shirt there, but what does it actually mean when you follow the story of how that thing was created and how it came about,
Totally.
the implication was, and then what the value of that ultimately and the whole supply chain and where it lands? I think that's probably where I'm these days the most caught up in. Okay, well, what does it mean? It's not just about putting the shelter on. It's not just about solving the problem, whatever. What is it to build something in a way that is so honoring of the resources it takes? Because everything takes a resource. That's the whole point. It's this whole world is all interconnected. Everything has a cost of some sort. And being honest with ourselves about that cost, about what it means to take that into account well, to produce what we are producing well in order to serve people, in order to take care, in order to create beauty, in order to nourish life. What does that mean to give ourselves opportunity to take care of the people that we're working with and employing? And anyway, in all of those cases, like ultimately, I just want to keep pulling in my world in my little ways. Like, what's the tension that I can hold to help continue to hold myself accountable to my choices and where that lands, so that ultimately we can be in the best possible of human creations, right? Like we are such an innovative species. We're coming up with so many ideas. We have so much power, and it's that like the rudder on the ship. Like, which way do we want to direct this power and innovation? How do we want to go? Where do we want to take ourselves?
What you mentioned, everything takes resources, but at the end of the day, as humans, like, we are just evolving. And I think as part of evolution is like seeing what new problems we come across and how we're going to be able to resolve them, right? And so one of the things that I read about, I don't know when that's going to happen or if that's going to happen, but that Elon Musk was saying that he was going to move the data centers to space, to like where they would be just cold, and now we don't need water. And so I don't know if that's going to happen, right? Or if that's even going to happen. But just the thought of knowing that, hey, this is the new problem, let's figure out a way on how we can actually solve this. And so with new technologies or new ways of living, right? Just like you mentioned, fashion, right? That wasn't a problem 100 years ago. Now it is. It's like, how do we resolve that problem? AI wasn't a thing 100 years ago. Now it is. Okay, how do we resolve that problem of not overusing all those resources and really really coming back with, okay, let's evolve into humans that can think better of like solving those problems and really doing more with less, because that's ultimately all what we want, is to do more with less resources. And I think that's simplifying life. It's just simplicity, and that just makes life so much better when we do too much, even in our businesses, right? When we just, like you said, Brit, we try to look at all the numbers, that creates overwhelm, and that creates a situation where you're not even sure where to focus. So seeing so much also creates overwhelm. So just being able to simplify and just bring it back to basics, it's just the best way. And hopefully we'll find solutions at some point.
Absolutely, and I think you're right, like, this is a moment of stretching innovation, so it's a moment of stretching what the solution is going to be, and so as challenging as it is right now with, like, the water and the energy production, I also see it in a very hopeful light that this is gonna be the thing that actually moves us into, like, truly renewable energy sources that probably we haven't even seen yet come to market. And we're just starting to see come to market. And it will pressure us because it's such a huge pain point because there's so much good that's coming from it, from just like the ability to optimize the human experience and the human ability to even create more connection and to create more connection to your children and free up your time, that it will pressure innovation and policy. I think that it'll pressure innovation and resources. And, I think that it's really ripe and we have to. Like one of the articles that came out recently in Popular Mechanics was that because of how much groundwater we've been pumping out of the earth, specifically from the Western North America and India, which is where high agriculture is produced, we have shifted the Earth's axis by 31.5 inches. That's pretty
Oh,
significant, like,
wow.
if you think about, like, a stop sign, and you're like, "Okay, what happens if I move that, like, 31.5 inches?" Like, that's a lot.
Yeah,
That's not
that's
insignificant.
crazy.
Yeah, and so I'm like, "Okay, like, we can't have data centers, like, creating that same" like,
Mhm.
we're gonna move the pole, like, we're moving the poles, I'm not sure exactly what's happening, but, like, we're this is not good, like, something's definitely gonna change. We're moving
Yeah, for
in the
sure.
right? Like, you're moving how the sun hits the earth. And so, when I think about like just policy around this, because there really isn't any, it's kind of the Wild West moment in data centers. I think about how much like landscape architects and landscape architecture can really be brought into the conversation as just like, how do we design for living machines in terms of like cleaning water? How do we design for like creating cooling environments around them? How do we offset carbon by doing planting and restoration in areas and so that it can have like a net zero uh, incentive. And I think that is really needing to be brought to the table. And, it's outside of what we're talking about, like business systems and how you operate it, but it is a really important part of the conversation. And, I hope there is some people listening here that are within like data center development and within policymakers that can start to bring this conversation to light, and we're happy to talk with it if you're listening. And when I think about like the good that it does, I really wanted to bring we really wanted to bring you on because we wanted to talk about how to optimize within your business with AI and say, okay, like if you need help with that, go talk to Andrea because the best part about being a business owner who's failed multiple times, which I have too, like you hit these moments of growth where you either sink or swim and you think you're doing the right thing, right? But you just like blew it up, is that you learn through pain. And honestly, like you don't want to be coached by somebody or be hiring somebody who like has just had like the smooth sailing uh trajectory because that doesn't really invite them into how to help you when you hit these pain points. Because one of my favorite sayings that we've both heard is new levels, new devils. And every time you create more revenue and you create more teammates on your crew and on your admin side, is that you end up having to create new systems. So whether you're in marketing problems and you're trying to generate leads, or you're in sales problems and you're not having great conversion, or you're in systems problems, the truth is that you're going to keep cycling through those three problems. Like there's never a point in your business, and if there is, it means you're not growing, that you aren't continuously visiting challenges within sales, marketing, and systems. And one of my favorite parts about Dan Martell's Buy Back Your Time book is that using AI and like is the thing that will also help you buy back your time. It's how you will start to be able to be a better leader. a better mom, a better teammate, so that you can actually step into the visionary seat and lead from mission and just really coordinate around how to create the raving fan experience for your client, because your client is the person that you're the most in love with in your team, and your employees are your clients too. Everyone needs to know that. And you just really think about what the best experience is for them, because when you bring a team around mission and around a positive ritual and a positive experience, they're going to advocate for you because they are your raving fan. And taking yourself out of the busy, the making 50 phone calls a day, the making sure you send every email, and just like giving yourself calm to be able to innovate within your business is how you're is one of the key components of how you're actually going to scale.
I completely agree with what you just said.
This is why I love these conversations, is listening and learning, hearing what people are encountering, how they're experiencing their choices and what they're innovating. I feel like I'm just continuing to be in this mindset of how do we be the most thoughtful innovators we can be and be accountable to our decisions, accountable to the people, and the again back to mother nature, like what are our real implications at the end of it all. I don't want to I don't want to be on my deathbed imagining like, oh, I was entirely productive at the cost of every relationship in my life. That's not it. So where do we balance doing what we do and caring deeply about what we most need to care about? And so really in that case, Andrea, I'm just thankful to hear your stories and listen. And I hope, again, all the listeners out there, there are folks from all different walks. And I feel like these are evolving conversations that matter so much. And even this notion of, hoping that policy changes, for example, like that hope is on all of our shoulders. We can be advocates for policy. We can be advocates for saying this is an incredible tool, but it's a powerful tool. So, what is our responsibility to guide our leaders and our innovative business leaders as well to be held accountable to their allowances so that we're directing it in a positive direction?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And, going back, what you mentioned with being in your deathbed, right? And thinking to yourself, like, what would life have been? Like, I don't want to be thinking that I could have done something differently, right? Or that I didn't give the best of me, or that I didn't make the right decisions or the right choices. Like, sometimes we'll make the bad decisions and we learn and whatnot, but it's just like, to me, it all comes back to just that circle of life and trying to be the best possible version in every area of our lives, right? And for me, the past couple of months have been a huge growth at a spiritual level. And it's how do you make that the center of like everything that's, whether that's business, whether that's decisions that you're making, the creativity, because at the end of the day, we are all in business. And if we have not found it, because it's something that I found this year, is like the reason why we're in business is to serve people, right? And to serve humanity. And if you have not realized that, it's just connecting that spirituality and realizing that everything's spiritual, right? It all comes back to how you're going to continue making progress in life and fulfilling that potential, and really seeing that, let me be conscious, let me do my work, let me do my whatever it is that I do in my business, my line of work, but do it consciously from a place where I know that I'm doing the best that I can to make sure that I leave this world better than I found it. And that's everything, right? And that means the decisions that you make in terms of resources. That just means how you connect with people, how you treat everybody on a daily basis, how you're able to serve people through the sales that you make, right? Through the services that you offer, the services that you provide. And yeah, so I love what you said.
Thank you.
Andrea, this has been lovely. I know this has been more of a look into not just what the systems are that you can implement within your business and who to call. I know that this has been a bit more about just what we really see within AI within the business and the kind of person that you are. So thanks for showing up as your full self. It's very appreciated. Yes.
Yeah, no, happy to have that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want you to share about, how people connect with you and how people can start the journey with you on just being guided into how to implement everything we've talked about today.
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you're in a situation where you're like, I have no idea what AI even is or how it can even serve me and my business, then you can start just by following my content. I put a lot of free content to help people and educate people on how to use AI on a daily basis, how to help them understand what functions it can take part of in your life. So start there. If you're like, okay, I'm ready to implement this in my business, then I'm present in every social media platform. So I'm most active on Instagram. It's where I live right the most. So you could just follow me on Instagram. We can start a conversation and I can see if I can help you out if it's a fit. And if not, I can always point you in the right direction, right? So it's just knowing. And if you're just the type of person that you're like, I want to learn this on my own, don't get overwhelmed by all the number of tools that you're scrolling through social media and you see a brand new tool every single day, something that is changing the world every single day. You don't need to feel overwhelmed by that. Just pick one that you can go all in. And so for me, my choice is Claude. I go all in on Claude. So Anthropic, you can find solutions like Claude Cowork, Claude Code, Claude Design, Claude Chat. And with that, you could just automate your entire systems, your entire processes. So if you just start by using it, a lot of things to remember is that things that we haven't done before are naturally going to be uncomfortable. They're naturally going to feel like we're just not prepared for that, right? Like I tell my clients, you've been typing for the past 30 years. Now I'm asking you not to type ever again, but to just speak to the computer and just talk to it, right? So it's creating new habits from a point where it's like, well, this is what's going to help me by, if you're just think of it in a way where, okay, I'm just saving 30 minutes here, 30 minutes here. Now you end up at the end of the month, you've saved 20 hours at the end of the month. What are you going to do with those 20 hours, right? Now you have the opportunity, the possibility to spend that with your family, to go on a family vacation, to go on a family trip, or to even be fully present, even if it's on the growth, the vision, the strategy of the business. So just don't feel like it's not impossible. It's not hard. It's just something that's new, and anything that's new causes uncomfort. That's just the way you have to think about it. And yeah, just go all in, and every single day try to push yourself to do something. Just a lot of times we don't trust AI to do certain things for us, but we haven't pressure tested it, right? We just need to give it that task and trust that it can do work for us, and just say, hey, don't be lazy, do it, right? Tell it to do certain things that you want it to do, and you'll start seeing how you receive outcomes that you weren't even expecting, or have it do work for you that you didn't know it was even possible.
And if somebody is your client, like what is it that you are doing with them to get them to the place?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I have two different services that I offer. Right now, I'm still doing one-on-one consulting and implementation. And so when we go that route, I analyze your entire business. We have a conversation. I ask you questions to understand where your time's going, where your team's time is going, so that we can really know exactly where to start. And as we go through that conversation, I'll make suggestions on the type of systems that we can implement to help you get your time back, to help your team increase their productivity. And so that's really where we start when it comes to one-on-one consulting and implementation, right? I also have my coaching program where I have a lot of business owners just go through the program by understanding how to really become an AI first company. So starting by learning how to use these tools, learning by how to really identify the constraints or the problems that they're facing in their business, and what would be the right solutions for those specific problems that they're facing. And so those are the two paths that I can help people out, and especially obviously business owners.
Great. And I notice you're offering a free masterclass, which starts to get people starting to think about, what it is
Yeah.
that they can do and what it looks like to work with you too.
Yep, correct. So I do that right now. I'm doing it for this month 2 times a week. So I'm actually having the masterclass in once we finish the call. So I do it every Monday and Thursday, and it's a live call where I'm just sharing the knowledge as much as I can fit in those 90 minutes, answer questions to help people feel more comfortable with AI and how it can help them in their business.
Fantastic. That's such a great resource. Well, thank you so much for coming today. And we truly
Yeah.
appreciate you.
Yeah. Thank you guys for inviting me. It's been great. I loved having a conversation with you guys.
And we'll tag Andrea's links in the notes below. And you'll find her on Instagram at Andrea Palacio, AndreaPalacio. And Instagram is my favorite way to interact with you. So
Yep.
go find her there.
Thank you.